Until the British came in 1917, the land that for convenience we can call Palestine was part of a large, rickety, but long-enduring Ottoman Empire. In modern Israel, relics of that empire are not particularly honored. The historical passion of the newcomers is for a yet more distant past, a biblical past which confirms their own historical claim to the land. But the evidence of long years of Ottoman rule is inescapably present. The great walls which surround the old city of Jerusalem, built by the Sultan at the end of the 16th century, are still the most striking reminder that for 400 years Palestine was part of the Ottoman Empire. And the walls whose minarets blend with fortifications reveal the special character of that empire, its Islamic nature. The Sultan who ruled it was also Caliph, religious head of Islam. His temporal power had a religious sanction. In general, the Muslim Arabs didn't feel oppressed.
I don't think that the people considered the Turks as aliens, as they did the British and the French later on. They were considered to be sort of altogether one, as I said earlier, one culture, one civilization, one flag, one religion. After all, the Ottoman Empire was the last of the great Muslim states. And insofar as Islam is the religion of the majority of the people in the Arab world, there's no doubt in my mind that the consensus of feeling, if not opinion, during that period was that, all right, we are all one thing, we belong to the same type of culture, we have lived together, so there is no need for separation.
The Sultan Caliph of the crumbling Ottoman Empire in the last decades of the 19th century was this man, Abdul Hamid II. He had come to the throne in 1876 and was to rule until he was deposed in 1908. Throughout his long reign, Abdul Hamid looked with sour disfavor on the influx of Jews into his Arab provinces. As early as 1882, he began to impose restrictions against Jewish immigration and land purchase, but he failed. During his reign, the Jewish population increased from about 25,000 to something like 80,000. This scene at Rishon-LeZion in 1911 shows by how much he failed. Why? The answer lies partly in the political structure of the country at this time. It was divided into provinces and districts, known as vilayets and sanyaks. Jerusalem and its district was an independent sanyak. Its governor dealt directly with Constantinople, without going through Beirut and Damascus. Politically, the land of Sham, or Syria as it was known, wasn't an entity. The multiplicity of officials and administrators who ran it were not uniformly efficient at implementing government policy, nor equally enthusiastic about doing so, and some were dishonest and could be bought. Jerusalem itself posed special problems. First, because immigrants could disappear into the long-established Jewish community which lived there. And then there were the tourists. Entering as such, many Jews simply stayed. Under old treaty agreements, the European powers offered protection to their own nationals. These privileges could be invoked by any Jew with a valid foreign passport. So keeping the Jews out was very difficult, and the Sultan failed to do so. Not all the Jews in Palestine, though, were modern immigrant Zionists. In towns like this one, Safed, there were and still are long-established Jewish communities. This old synagogue was built by Sephardic Jews from Spain in the 16th century. The people who use it now and still live in the town have been there for generations. But these people defined themselves through their religion. They had no political or national ambitions. Again, in Jerusalem, there'd been an increasing and virtually continuous Jewish presence for hundreds of years. But these older pre-Zionist Jews fitted harmoniously enough into a predominantly Arab culture, often spoke Arabic, and earned their living as craftsmen and traders. Judaism for them had not yet been secularized into a set of political goals.
I can tell you one case of like my family. I know my forefathers came from Turkey. That was almost 300 years ago. They came to Jerusalem. The first one who came, we don't know much about him. We know a lot about his son, and he was a rabbi. And he came here because this is the land of our forefathers. It was destroyed by our sins. We have to make good and come back and rebuild it through prayers. And they were, I would say, dreamers and builders, workers. They were artisans. They were, many of them spent all their time just praying and learning and studying. I would say it was not an organized thing. It was more an individual urge of people to come and settle here. I would say that after the Jews were expelled from Spain in the end of the 15th century, it was a catastrophe of those days. People who were well-to-do and well-established, suddenly they found themselves, they were expelled, undesired, and many of them came here because they thought that the Messiah will come only when your sufferings reach a climax, and they thought that was a climax. Well, they didn't know that Hitler would be another climax. And they came here, they thought that would be the end of sufferings, and they dedicated themselves to, as I said, to prayers and studying and reviving the Jewish heritage, and serve in their personal life as a model to what honesty should be, righteousness.
In 1882, the first new colonies began to appear. Indeed, there's still something faintly colonial in the appearance of little towns like Zichron Yaakov. The people who came here were European settlers. And as employers, they rubbed along more or less satisfactorily with the Arabs who worked for them. But shortly after the turn of the century, settlers who appeared to the Arabs much more abrasive made their appearance. They were modern in outlook, socialist Zionists, committed to the idea of using exclusively Jewish labor. They found it necessary to arm themselves. By 1914, Jewish agricultural settlements were dotted all over the area, ignoring the boundaries of vilayet and sanyak, province and district. In a sense, the Jews were defining, in their biblical claims, the area which later Arab nationalists would think of as an entity. But Arab nationalism at this stage expressed itself largely as a response to the Jews, as anti-Zionism. In 1908, the Committee for Union and Progress, the Young Turks, seized power in Constantinople, and something new took place. Abdul Hamid was deposed. The new rulers were in a sense modern. An Ottoman parliament was re-established. Newspapers and political comment began to flourish. Anti-Zionism became public.
In the early years of the 20th century, people were generally, and the public was aware of the danger and the menace of Zionist immigration into the country. They really were worried about it, and we have our two Arabic daily papers, one in Haifa, Al-Carmel, which named after Mount Carmel, you see, and one in Jaffa, named after Palestine, Palestine in Arabic is Palestine. Both of them were writing almost daily against the threatened migration into Palestine of Jews en masse.
The situation is characterized in this cartoon which appeared in an Arab newspaper in 1911. Salah al-Din, or Saladin as we know him, defeater of the Crusaders, addresses a Jew. "Keep away from this fortress, you swindler, or else I will set upon you the armies of my descendants. You will not come near a fortress I conquered with my Arab blood." And the Jew replies, "As long as my foreign passport is in my pocket, and there are £15 million to sate the notables and to cure the itch of the high officials, I care not." The foreign passport gave the Jew protection under the European consul from Ottoman laws. The money bribed the very corruptible officials charged by the Sultan with stopping Jewish immigration and land purchase. In 1914, Khragib al-Nashishibi, a leading Jerusalem notable, stood for the Ottoman parliament. He said in his election address, "If I am elected as a deputy, I will dedicate all my strength day and night to remove the damage and danger awaiting us through the Zionists and Zionism."
But there were other candidates. All the candidates at the time had the question of anti-Zionism on their platform. And of course, it was a very touchy question over here. And of course, although villagers, most of these people owned sometimes villages, you see, or large plantations. They had tenants on their lands, and their tenants would certainly, most definitely, elect them, you see, vote for them. But there were other candidates who also had the same thing, but almost every candidate at the time had on his platform that they must, when they got into parliament in Istanbul, fight against Zionism, you see. So Zionism, it started really much earlier than even the British entry and the Balfour Declaration here.
It was in 1917 that the British were to establish themselves by conquest as the new rulers of Palestine. The once mighty power of the Ottoman Empire was broken. Beneath the great walls of the city, Jerusalem's dignitaries, Arab and Jew, assembled to greet their new masters. The soldiers who stood there to receive those greetings served an alien government already committed to the Zionist cause. It was a commitment which would enlarge and intensify a conflict which had already taken root.